Every January, Hollywood puts on a familiar performance: red carpets, designer gowns, carefully rehearsed jokes that pretend nothing matters. The Golden Globes present themselves as a celebration of art, but for decades, they were something else entirely. They were power, concentrated, opaque, and largely unaccountable. To understand why the Golden Globes nearly collapsed in 2021, we need to stop treating that year as an accident and start seeing it as an outcome. The Golden Globes were created in 1944 by a small group of foreign journalists calling themselves the Hollywood Foreign Press Association. They weren't filmmakers. They weren't critics with large audiences. They were a tiny, self-selecting group, and that was their advantage. Because Hollywood is an industry obsessed with visibility, and the HFPA controlled something priceless: attention. A Golden Globe nomination could transform an awards season campaign. A win could redefine a career, and for decades that power was exercised behind closed doors. Unlike larger academies, the HFPA had very few members, often fewer than 100, yet their votes carried global consequences. There was no meaningful public oversight, no external audit, and little transparency about how members were admitted or how votes were cast. That structure created incentives, and those incentives were quietly exploited. Studios learned that influence didn't require outright bribery. It required access, invitations, lavish meals, luxury trips, private screenings followed by personal attention. None of it was technically illegal, but all of it raised the same question. If voters are being courted like VIPs, how independent can their decisions really be? This wasn't speculation, it was a pattern. As early as the late 1950s, insiders accused the organization of treating awards as favors. In 1968, US regulators raised concerns that the Golden Globes were misleading the public about how winners were chosen, leading NBC to temporarily stop broadcasting the ceremony. That should have been a warning. Instead, it became precedent. The show returned, the structure remained, and the incentives intensified. By 1982, the Golden Globes were already widely seen as vulnerable to influence. That perception exploded with the Pia Zadora scandal. Zadora won New Star of the Year over far more critically acclaimed performances. Soon after, reports surfaced that HFPA members had been flown to Las Vegas and lavishly entertained by her husband shortly before voting. The message was clear and damaging. At the Golden Globes, proximity could outweigh merit. Yet the ceremony survived. In fact, it thrived. Because controversy didn't hurt ratings, it fueled them. By the 2000s, the Globes had become famous for chaos disguised as charm. Alcohol on tables, unscripted speeches, celebrities behaving badly. The joke was that the Golden Globes were the fun awards. But the fun masked something darker, a system that rewarded closeness, compliance, and silence. In 2011, those concerns surfaced again, when a former HFPA publicist filed a lawsuit alleging pay-to-play arrangements and financial misconduct. The details were uncomfortable. The implications were serious, and once again, nothing fundamental changed. Until 2021, that year, an investigation by the Los Angeles Times exposed a fact so stark, it cut through decades of denial. The HFPA had 0 black members, not one. In an industry built on global storytelling and increasingly vocal about diversity, the group deciding one of its most visible honors lacked even minimal representation. But the reporting didn't stop there. It examined finances, member compensation, lavish perks, opaque governance. What emerged wasn't just a diversity failure, it was a governance failure. A small group had controlled a global cultural institution with almost no accountability. Hollywood's response was swift and unusually unified. Major studios froze relationships, publicists cut access, actors denounced the organization, and NBC pulled the broadcast entirely. For the first time in decades, the Golden Globes didn't just face criticism, they faced extinction. In 2022, there was no televised ceremony, no red carpet, no applause, just absence. Under pressure, the HFPA promised reform, new members, new ethics codes, new diversity initiatives. Eventually, the organization went further. dissolving itself and transferring the Golden Globes into a for-profit entity under new ownership, while moving charitable activities into a separate foundation. On paper, it was a reset. In reality, critics argued it was a rebranding, because while ownership changed, the fundamental tension remained. The Golden Globes are still an award show that profits from access, still dependent on studios, still entangled with marketing campaigns. By 2024 and 2025, the ceremony returned to US television under a new deal with CBS. The lights were back on, but trust is harder to restore than airtime. Today, the Golden Globes exist in a strange space. They survived, but diminished, reformed, but questioned, visible, but scrutinized. They are no longer just about honoring performances. They are about whether Hollywood is willing to confront how power actually works behind glamour. Because institutions don't fail overnight. They fail slowly, protected by prestige, money, and silence. The Golden Globes weren't undone by one scandal. They were undone by decades of warnings that were ignored. So when the next ceremony airs, remember, you are not just watching an awards show. You are watching an institution trying to prove it deserves to exist at all. And this time, applause is not enough. Thanks for watching. Subscribe for more deep dive stories that question power, expose systems, and look beyond the spotlight.